Black Americans should be embarrassed or ashamed of the fact that a poll had to be created that named certain cities and towns the worst cities for Black Americans to live. Because we're aware that Black Americans are always crying racism and crying the victim, and instead of trying to help themselves, they help everybody else but themselves. And when it comes to themselves, they have become content with being on the bottom, always have their hands out, and begging the white man for something that they refuse to work for themselves. Now, I saw this article in Syracuse.com, and you see the title of this article. Syracuse named one of the worst cities for Black Americans to live. One of the worst cities for Black Americans to live. And this article have a list of excuses. The same type of excuses that we always hear Black Americans crying and complaining about, but yet never do anything to help themselves and to pick themselves up out of the condition that they are in. Well, I'm sure that there's some blacks out there that's going to say, aren't you black too? Right? But let me tell you something. I can recall twice in my life where I lost everything, where I had to actually start over. I actually had to start over. And that was one time when I was in the military. I was stationed in Fort Riley, Kansas. And everyone was out in the field. I didn't go out in the field. And we had to stay in these other barracks. You know, we couldn't stay in our own barracks. But my unit was going out in the field. So one night I'm laying in the bunk, I'm asleep. And somebody came and tried to wake me up and was saying to me, your room is on fire. So I didn't believe him because, you know, in the barracks you had guys that, you know, we play tricks on each other, you know. So I didn't take them serious. And they kept coming in saying like, yo, your room is on fire, man. Your room is burning up. So I kept sleeping. I didn't worry about it, right? The next morning when I woke up, I went over to the barracks and I noticed that there was like blackness all around outside the windows, you know, soot. And went up in there and my room was completely destroyed. Everything that I owned, everything to my name, the only thing I had left was what I had on my back. Everything was gone. My roommate, never forget, racist white dude. You know, he had nooses and everything and demonic tattoos on his body, that type of person. Tackett went to sleep with a cigarette, with a lit cigarette. Set everything on fire. Lost everything. So I had to start from scratch. Of course, I was in the military, and the military reimbursed so much of the money, you know. And I was able to, and the jacket, the first jacket, one of the first jackets I bought, I still have that jacket to date, just to remind me of when I had to start over again, you know. But I managed to pick myself up again. Second time I had to start over was when I ETS out of the military. When you get out of the military, unless you have money saved up or, you know, you get your final paycheck or what have you, that's the only money you have to your name. But when you out process, they take everything back. When I got out, I had, of course, my uniform, my fatigues, and my field jacket. But the ID, I had no ID, none whatsoever. Even my driver's license had expired. But being in the military, you have so much time to, even after you get out, because they add years or time to your license, even if they expire, they still add time to that because of the fact that you're in the military. So I still had time to get my license renewed. Okay. And so I had no license. I had no ID, no nothing. They took back everything when I got out the service. So I had to start from scratch, and I stayed at my mother's house. And to be a grown man, because when I left home, I was a boy. When I came back, I was a man. And to have to come back to mom's house with nothing, although my family is pretty tight, so family helps family. That's the environment I came up in, and that's the environment I raised my sons to believe in family, and family helps family when family is down. And I think that's one of the big problems within the black community is the fact that there is not too many family units that still exist. Even when it comes to just the race of people itself, there's not enough unity. So if you have a black businesses don't support black people, don't really support black businesses. Okay. So I had nothing. So I stayed at my mom's house, and my sisters, every now and then they gave me a piece of change for me to have it in my pocket and whatnot. But I felt like so low. Okay. Although I understood my condition, they understood my condition because I'm just getting out of the military. I couldn't find no job. It took me forever to find work. I was depressed, man. I was going through all type of, emotional issues, right? Coming out of the military. And all I had was my family to rely on, And, my sister would give me money. I told them, I'll pay you back. I'll pay you back. I'll pay you back. But they really didn't care about me paying them back, and now, which I did anyway. And thought about suicide, man. So it's like, when I'm coming out of the military, and then you got PTSD and all this other kind of good stuff, undiagnosed PTSD at the time, man. Contemplating suicide, man, and all kind of nonsense, because I just wanted to end it, man, because you just feel less than a man, because I was brought up to be a man. A man takes care of his responsibility, So went through a lot of changes, but I endured. And my first job that I got was through what was it? What do we call it? The thingamajig. Anyway, my first job was working at the school district in the mailroom. That was my first job. NAACP. Okay, first job I got through the NAACP, right? And first job was in the mailroom at the school district, man. And I felt kind of good, because I was, at least making something, I was able to buy the things that I need, and but I started at the bottom. And as time went on, I went back to school. Right? And the first major I had was computer support, right? And then I went to school for psychology and then photography, because that was my interest and all that good stuff, right? So I ended up going back to school, right? And and then from there, I started working for different corporations, and I started, as time went on, things started getting better for me until I ended up, deciding to create my own job. I created my own business and whatnot, right? So, and then things kept going up from there. But the point was, I started from nothing. Twice I started from nothing, right? But I think that and I'm going to get to the article, but I think that when people reach their bottom, they reach their lowest, it's almost like, especially people in this day and time, because I came up in a different era, so in this day and time, it's like black Americans have no type of drive, no motivation, no creativity. Even when it comes to music, man, there's no creativity. R&B probably rarely don't even exist anymore. Nobody really makes R&B, and then the ones that do make R&B music, not too many play their own instruments, So, but when I came up in the era I came up in, I mean, people were musically talented, and it showed, man. So, but nowadays it's like the Black Americans now that exist, man, it's like they just complacent. They're content with being beggars, instead of trying to work to pick themselves up, to better themselves, not just individually, but as a unit, as a race of people. They're just lazy, and they expect everyone else to help them, right? So it was hard, man, but one thing I refused to do, and I'm going to tell you a couple of thoughts that came to my mind. A couple of thoughts came to my mind was, outside of suicide, of course, was being a hitman, I was going to hook up with the mob, man, and I was down to be a hitman and everything because I'm just getting out of the military. I'm like a professional and expert at what I did in the military. One shot, one kill was our slogan, man. One shot, one kill. I was good at what I was doing. I was good at killing. So that's what I mastered in the military. So when I got out, man, I was thinking about being a hitman. Briefly, I thought about drugs, but then that didn't even last. It came and went, because that's one thing I would never ever do. I never had to do that. I never would ever do that. So that's like just the lowest. That's the lowest form of excuse. Is get out there and sell drugs, man, and destroy your own community and destroy families, man. You just don't do that. But all kind of crazy things started coming to my mind, man. But when those things start coming to my mind, I had to get myself in order. I had to reach down within myself and pull myself together, man. I had to talk to myself, literally. I had to, motivate me. Of course, I had my family that motivated me, but I had to motivate myself. I refused to stay on the bottom. And had I stayed on the bottom, I probably would have ended up dead. I probably would have ended up in jail. Or I probably would have ended up a statistic being named one of the worst, being in the worst. I'm one of the Black Americans that this is one of the worst cities for me to live in. Had I have allowed myself to remain where I was. Now, you have immigrants that come here. And blacks, you should be really, really embarrassed and ashamed of yourself. Because you have like immigrants that come here that can't speak the language or barely can speak the language. And here it is, they speak the language that you grew up in a whole lot better than you. And now they're opening businesses in your neighborhoods and selling goods to you, coming up off of you, and you support them more than you support your own people, right? And here it is, they are now, when I go inside the VA, I see, for doctors, I see majority immigrants, Middle Eastern people. Right? And these are people that came to this country, man, and now they're like patching up your gunshot wounds. You've been here all your life. And I think what the problem is the fact that, and I'm going to get to the article, one of the problems is the fact that in school, you have the same opportunities that everybody else have in this country. Everybody start out the same, except with the exception of the family structure. Your mom and dad, because charity starts at home and spreads abroad. So if your parents aren't together, naturally you're not going to be together unless, of course, you're that rare breed that look at your family structure, look at everything around you. Even young people, there are young people that are awakened, and they look around and they see themselves and they see the condition that they're in and their family in, and they vow as a young child, I will never be this way. I'm going to be better than my parents are. I'm never going to be this way. And they go to school. They get up in the morning. The parent don't have to tell them to get up in the morning. And they would get themselves ready. They would go to school. They would do whatever chores they have to do around the house. And they would be on their way to school. They would strive. If they're struggling in school, they would get the help. They will motivate themselves to go to the teacher and say, I need help. I'll stay after school for extra credit. I stay after school for help, right? And of course, these are some of the young people that may be bullied because of the fact that they are looked at as a nerd. They're looked at as, you think you're better than we are. Who do you think you are? You can't hang out with us. But yet you have a goal. You have a plan in mind, right? So there's young people that are awakened. And it's sad when you sit next to the same person now that you are now adults and you out there doing whatever you want to do, selling drugs, what have you, and then you end up in the courthouse, man, and the judge that you have to stand before was your classmate that you sat next to, the one that did his homework, the one that did what he was supposed to have done, the one that you teased, and now you standing before him, and now he's got your life in his hands, right? But you have immigrants that come to this country, man, and learn the language better than you, and now they're doing better than you, and now you're now a statistic of one of the worst cities for Black Americans to live. No other race of people, just Black Americans, because Black Americans are so used to begging. I mean, look at this picture right here. Look at that picture. Look at this picture of this dude right here. And then this brother looking out the window, with some food. These could have been any type of photos, but these are the ones that they used. But it should be embarrassing, man, because they're telling you that you can't make it here because you show them that you can't make it there. And why is this one of the worst cities for Black Americans living? Because you're killing yourselves. Black on black violence and crime. And that's probably at the very top. You always talk about racism and discrimination. I never really had to deal with that. There were some cases that when I first came out of the military, and I told this story before, and I went for a job interview, and when that white man saw my face, because I'm on the phone, my voice sounded different to him, right? Sold me a dream on the phone. Saw my resume, sold me a dream. I went in for an interview. He looked at me, and it was like everything changed. I didn't get the job, right? So, but that didn't stop me. It discouraged me a little bit, but it didn't stop me. You understand? Because no one have that type of power over my life unless I allow them to have that kind of power over my life. And coming up in New York, man, we had this thing that if you can make it in New York, man, you can make it anywhere. Right? So I'm a survivor. There's no place that I cannot make it. Any place I decide to reside in, I will make it. Even at a very young age, I've always said that I will never see poverty. My sons will never see poverty. Never, never, ever. I don't believe in poverty. I don't believe in it. As long as I'm able-bodied and I'm able to work for myself, I'm able to think. And see, that's where it begins at. Knowing how to think. And you learn how to think by going to school, by getting the education. Once you get that education, man, you like spread your wings and you fly, man, as high as you can go. I have an aunt, right? My aunt had 15 children. 15, 16 children, right? 15 kids, they had 15 children, so many cats, so many dogs, so many roaches. The house was filthy coming up, right? And I remember I used to go over their house, man, like that's my aunt, right? So we didn't judge them, you know? There was a lot of them, right? And today, man, they live, I got some cousins, that some of them same cousins live in Atlanta, got a very beautiful house. It almost looked like a mansion on the inside, right? One's computer support tech, and maybe she may be an engineer by now, right? I have cousins that's in the law, that's a lawyer, all of them went to school except for like one or two of them, but they just about all of them went to school. They're all doing well for themselves. If they don't have any high-end jobs, they're self-employed. They have their own businesses. Like my family, my sisters, man, I got one into the legal field, man. She got her own law firm, legal business. And then I have my other one, she had her own business, and my brother got his own business. I have my own business, right? So we all doing well, and none of us had ever seen or had to see poverty, man, because we got that knowledge, right? But when you're in school, man, and you like skip classes or you play around in school and you barely pass, that right there is a recipe for failure, because young people, what you do now with your life is going to have a lot to do with how your future turns out. What you do now while you're young, get what you can now while you're young so that you don't end up being a statistic. And it's embarrassing, man, that blacks, they would even say this. Syracuse named one of the worst cities for black Americans to live. Now, I'm going to read a portion of this. It says, one factor contributing to racial inequality is residential segregation. The financial website says discriminatory lending practices and housing policies have historically separated black and white residents along geographic lines. Now, I've never really been turned down for loans. The only time that I can honestly say that I was turned down for a loan was back in time when my credit was horrible. I like demolished my credit when I was younger, in my early teens. My early 20s. So if I applied for a loan, of course I didn't get no loan, because I had bad credit, right? So, but once I repaired my credit, I did it myself. Once I repaired my credit and I went and applied, I remember I went to buy a car, and I just knew I wasn't going to get it because I started paying everything in cash. I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't mess with credit, because my credit was bad. I knew I wasn't going to get anything, right? So, I used to bounce checks and everything, man. It's like I worked, but it's like, at the same time, it's like I paid my bill. I spent my money foolishly, and then I started bouncing checks, man. I knew that, I can write so much over, the purchase and whatnot. So I started bouncing checks, and then the bank fees were eating me up and whatnot. But then once I made up in my mind to pull myself out of that rut, I stopped. If I didn't need it, I didn't bother with it. If I couldn't buy it, I wouldn't buy it. I had to buy it. I had to pay cash. If I couldn't pay with cash, I didn't want it at all. So one day I decided to go in and try to buy a brand new car. So I went in, applied for this car, and I just knew I was going to get turned down, right? The guy came back from the bank, told me, oh, you was approved. And I'm like, what? In my mind, I'm thinking like, what? What's going on here? That's okay, right, all right. But the interest rate was high. The interest rate was high because my credit, was up there. It was pretty good, but, it called for high credit, right? So I got the car, man, and, I made my payments and everything and blah, blah, blah. And before you realize it, I applied for like one of those credit cards, man, like where $500 and then, you're using your own money. And as time went on, they started giving me money, right? So they started sending me credit cards in the mail, and I started getting platinum and, all kind of cards like that. And my credit just went up, started being good, and I had no problem. So when I went to buy my home, I had no problem buying a home. I didn't get turned down. Now, I know from loaning black, because I've loaned black people money and I've loaned white people money. White people, whenever I loaned them some money, didn't matter what they had going on in their life. When they came back, when it was time, when they said they was going to pay me back, I got the money back. Even before they told me, even before the day that they set that they was going to get, they came and they gave the money back to me. They paid me back. So if they came back a second time and wanted to borrow money, I had no problem giving it to them because I know I'm going to get it back. But black people, this money I still didn't get back, right? I remember it was as low as something like $5. Dude came in my store. Can I get a CD? I'll pay you back. $5, right? So I let him get the CD. Never got it back. So I had to go get it. I had to get gangster to get my CD back. Because I'm thinking like it's only $5, but it's the principle behind it. You know, you guys know how it works. Street. You know, you let somebody get away with something, man, you're going to find somebody else can come along, think you're weak, right? So I had to get gangster on the dude, man, to get my $5 back. You know, well, you ain't got to come at me like that, man. Like, well, look, y'all had bills to pay. Well, hey, look, I'm a bill. You know, I'm a bill. You told me to let you know that I was going to get it back, X, Y. I shouldn't have to chase you for my money regardless of how much it is, you know. So black people, I will not loan to black folk. And that's one of the reasons why you guys cannot go get no loans, because you don't pay back. All right? So, discriminatory lending practices and housing policies have historically separated black and white residents along geographic lines. In many of the cities with the worst racial inequality, poor black neighborhoods and wealthier white neighborhoods are physically separated by a highway or other infrastructure. I don't blame them, because you don't want that mess that they're doing over in their community to come over in yours. That's just the way it is. And that's what black people created for themselves. Many black folk created that environment for themselves. You can't blame the system. You can't blame the white man. You blame no one but yourself. Right? And it says, Wall Street data found that Syracuse was the 8th worst city in America for black Americans. I never had an issue here, to be honest with you. I'm doing pretty good, right? My sons are doing pretty good because my sons do what I instructed them to do, right? So poverty, it don't exist with me, right? So I don't know what they're talking about, but I'm guessing because of the fact that there's so many blacks here that made the choice. Got nothing to do with racial inequality. It's the choices that you fail to make in life. Choices that you make for yourself and your family. There's like generation welfare recipients here. Your mama was on welfare, so you on welfare. Your great-great-grandmother was on welfare. Your great-great-great-great-grandmother was on welfare back until slavery, and now you're like just carrying on the whole generational curse. Everybody was on welfare, and if you talk about education to them, you become Uncle Tom or a Coon or Uncle Ruckus, just like black folk call us this on the internet. Think you better than we are. You can't hang out with us. You can't drink with us. No, I don't drink. I don't drink and I don't do drugs. Okay? So black people are responsible for their own downfall. White people ain't got nothing to do with that. And if you can't get no loan, it's because of the fact that you don't pay it back. You got bad credit. Build your credit, boost your credit up, and you will be able to get things that you want and things that you need. Right? So, in Syracuse, the poorest and wealthiest parts of the city are physically separated by Interstate 81, an elevated highway running through the center of the city that was completed in the mid-1960s, according to the financial site. Okay? And then it says, I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to put the article on the bottom. You guys can read it for yourself. Okay? It says, the income gap is so large, according to USA Today, the typical African-American household earns just 61 cents for every dollar that the typical white U.S. household earns. Now, I remember white salesmen used to come in my store to sell me things. And when they come in, they would ask me, like, if the manager's in, if the boss in. And I smile, I'm the boss. You should see their face just drop, right? Now, there's white dudes that I spoke to, man, that's struggling too. Not just black people, right? They're struggling trying to make it. There's a lot of white people on welfare, right? But this article is singling out black people, right? And there's white dudes that don't like the fact that I make more than they do. There's white dudes that didn't like that, right? They didn't like it. They felt that they are entitled to be making what I'm making, right? But if you go according to the statistics, white people are living better than black people. And there's a lot of black people that live better than whites. And these are the blacks that made the right choices for themselves and for their family. Okay? It says, in Syracuse, the numbers even lower. African Americans in Central New York earn just 44.2% as much as white income. Wall Street says just 7 U.S. cities are worse for black Americans. Erie, Pennsylvania is the worst, followed by Peoria, Illinois, Benton Harbor, Michigan, Trenton, New Jersey, and 3 metro areas in Wisconsin. The data focuses on race-based gaps in access to resources and opportunities. Now, the opportunities and the resources are there. Black Americans just don't take advantage of them. Okay? Now, when I was going to school, when I was in high school, if I fell behind social studies, if I got a bad grade on a test, of course, everybody wants to go outside after school and play and do what they do, have fun, go to your girl house, whatever. But I always said, can I stay after school for extra credit? You know, or can I stay after school because I need help in a certain area? I did that. I sacrificed my playtime, you know. And then, like, at the end of the school year, I was able to take the exam and I passed. But in this day and time, there's a lot of black Americans that refuse. And I say black Americans because this article is about black folk. In this day and time, black people refuse to make sacrifices for themselves and for their families. The only ones that I really see making sacrifices for themselves and family, and listen, black women, I want to give y'all the highest respect, man. I talk about ratchet chick. I ain't talking about them ratchet females that we used to talk about. But black women, listen, you guys are always on your grind, man. I truly, sincerely admire many of the black women that I see in the workforce, man, that's, you know, putting in that grind, man. They grinding, man. They work double shifts and triple shifts, and you know, and they going to school and they getting that money. And then you have these no good dudes, man, that's like living off of these females or these women that's working and their children. Listen, a lot of y'all black women, you need to get rid of these no good dudes, man. Listen, if they're not contributing to your household and to your children, you need to get rid of them, put them out. I don't care how good the dick is to you, get rid of them. Put them out, because that's dead weight. Get rid of them. If they don't have any type of motivation to do for themselves, he don't need to be living up under you, scarfing up your heat, eating up your food, right? Sleeping in your kid's bed. You know, you need to get rid of them. If there's a no good dude in your house, I don't care what kind of excuse he gives you or what kind of excuse you have to justify supporting him, you need to get rid of him, because that's dead weight, and the only thing he's doing is pulling you down. All right? So, all right, and like I said, and notice this is talking about data focused on race-based gaps, right? I personally don't experience that. I don't, right? Because of the fact of the choices that I make in my life and how I teach my sons, right? Now, if they make the choice to not help themselves and they fall into this statistic, that's on them because they know better. Once you have that knowledge, that information, man, you know, the Bible said it's God to give man the power to get wealth. That power is knowledge. You know, so once you get that knowledge, man, go to school, educate yourself, get that knowledge, and you apply that knowledge, either in corporate America or start your own business or just support your own local businesses, man. Support black businesses. Black people are responsible for ghettos. It ain't the white man. Because we in 2017 going into 2018, that played out. All that racism nonsense played out. And now the only person that's crying racism is black people. You keeping yourselves down, looking for sympathy, which create these type of news articles. So you should be embarrassed, man, to even see this news article. Right? So it says the figures are based on 2016 data from the U.S. Census Bureau's American Community Survey on median household income, poverty, education, home ownership, and unemployment rates. Incarceration rates, because you know that's black males right there. That's you. Black men, that's you right there. Incarceration rates from the Sentencing Project, a non-profit dedicated to criminal justice reform, and the CDC's age adjusted mortality rates. Black people, that's you. Incarceration rates and adjusted mortality rates. That's black Americans right there. That's black Americans, right? Now that's you, because you guys are in jail. You're filling the prison systems, right? They're making money off you because you're a slave now, right? And you're killing each other. You can't help but to shed the blood of each other. So those numbers play a big role in this place being one of the worst places for black Americans, because you die here. There's too many black Americans that die in this place for it to be so small, right? Adjusted mortality rate by race for each U.S. county from 2011 to 2015. And it says a similar study last year found that Syracuse has the highest rate of extreme poverty concentrated among blacks and Hispanics. Now, let me stop for a moment. Those blacks, or those people that's considered blacks, also include those what they call sanctuary cities. Those illegal immigrants that come here. There's a lot of Africans here, you know. So a lot of them Africans are included, and this is their way of getting money into the city, not going to the black community, but going to them, you know. So you guys are helping them with your poverty, is helping feed this beast, this system, right? Which I talked about. Now, this video I put on Fearless J 1111. Go there and check it out. It's not on Fearless 2005 channel. And it talks about that kind of stuff, the beast, you know. But yet it's like you guys are helping the beast, man. It's like you're still in captivity and you enjoy being in captivity, right? Okay, it says out of the nation's 100 largest metropolitan area in September, Census Bureau census data showed the poverty rate for all Syracusans had increased from 31% to 32.1%. The 13th worst in America. That's where black Americans live. Now, this is right here. This is the list right here of the 10 worst cities for black Americans according to 24/7 Wall Street. Erie, Pennsylvania, Peoria, Illinois, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Racine, Wisconsin, now Benton Harbor, Michigan, Minneapolis, Wisconsin, Trenton, New Jersey, Syracuse, New York, Springfield, Illinois, Bridgeport, Stanford, Norwalk, Connecticut. All right. And then also right here, there was an article that came out that says Syracuse, Rochester, and Buffalo all ranked among the worst cities to live in. And we already know why, because it's occupied by so-called Black Americans. Okay. So Black Americans should be ashamed of these articles. But this is the environment you create for yourself. You know, I don't believe in poverty, man. I believe that as long as I'm able-bodied, man, as long as I have a breath, the breath of life within me, I'm going to work, man. Whether if it's owning my own business or working for some type of corporation, I'm going to keep working, man. You know, because it's like if a man don't work, he don't eat. My sons will tell you, what is the number one thing your father taught you coming up about working? And they're going to tell you, if a man don't work, he don't eat. All right? So Black Americans, I don't believe in racism. I don't think that has anything to do with it. I don't think the system has anything to do with it. I think it's just plumb, as my grandmother used to say, plumb laziness. Just lazy black people that want things handed out to them. You know, everybody's going crazy because of this tax reform, right? And talking about how, oh, it's going to hurt the middle class and the poor people. Well, the poor people need to get up and go to work. You know, you need to stop being lazy, get up off your behind and go to work. Now, I made a video in the past and a lot of black folk didn't like it. It was called Stop Blaming the White Man for Everything. You know, especially if you're not doing anything to help yourself. I could take you right out. I could take you to any one of the corner stores here where the Arabs are. And who do you see on them corners? Black Americans hanging out. Acting a fool. Selling drugs. All right. So feedback, tell me what you think. I'm going to put the article link on the bottom and you can check it out for yourself. I'm also going to put a link to my PayPal, and you guys can click on that and donate to the channel. The brother would appreciate that. You know, it's more blessed to give than to receive. So reach into your pockets and give brother a little bit of something. Okay, so feedback, tell me what you think, subscribe. Until next time, I'm fearless.